Um, I thought I mixed up a lot of chats, and thank God I did not. See all of you in the chat box. I see James McDonald already saying, looking forward to this one, Tamara. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. Totally agree with that. It's taken me a long time to understand how to utilize healthy boundaries. And, now that I'm in my late 30s, I can look at myself and say, okay, I think I've done pretty good. Like right at the age of 30, uh, you know, I realize I need to change some things. We're going to talk about this tonight. Let me fix Instagram, and then we're going to jump in because I think you guys, you're going to want to hear what is happening in this live chat tonight. So, and I think you guys are going to be able to relate a lot. So bear with me. Let me get Instagram connected. I don't know why it does this to me. I don't know, but we're gonna fix it. I also think too for tonight's live chat, you're gonna be able to use what we talk about in all relationships, and I also think that you're gonna be able to process where there were lack of boundaries in your situation, whether that's with a parent, a romantic partner, a friend, a coworker, or even a boss. I think a lot of us want to know, how do you in a healthy way tell somebody no? How do you in a healthy way put up a boundary that protects you and protects the dignity of the relationship? We're going to get into all of that tonight. Okay, let me type a brief message to Instagram. I'm going to say, welcome to the live chat. Come join us on my channel. Okay. All right, they're good. We are good. Let's jump in. Okay, guys. So let's start with what is wrong. Okay, because I think in tonight's live chat, we're not going to just talk about, which is at the end of the chat, we're not going to just talk about how to utilize healthy boundaries and how to mean what you say and say what you mean. I heard somebody put it that way in my past. In order to figure out what you need to do and how you need to do it and when is contingent upon the relationship that you're in. Because if you're in a family situation, it's going to be a little bit difficult to say no. It's going to be a little bit difficult to say, you know what, I don't think so. This is not going to work. Because most family members, at least this is the way that I see it. Tell me if you see it this way as well. Most family members already assume that you are a certain way because they've known you. They are so close that they feel like they already know who you are. And they feel like they can feel like there's this freedom to treat you any way that they want to treat you, to say anything that they want to say, even to pry into your business, even to gossip and spread things in the family. I tend to see, and primarily in my practice, many families who lack boundaries with each other and don't know how to respect a family member who says, I'm not going to share that with you right now. Because the family feels we are family, we should be able to talk, we should be able to share things and not hide anything. I once had a young man. I felt so bad for him. He was 13. And you know how young boys are. They're trying to grow up, young men. They're trying to figure things out. They're trying to understand themselves and other relationships and the world around them. And I just think by the age of 13, a boy, maybe a girl as well, should have a certain level of respect. Well, this family that I had, mom wanted to keep his bedroom door open at all times. She wanted to check his cell phone. She got him a cell phone, but she wanted to check it every day, half the day, to make sure that he's not saying anything wrong, which is fine within reason. But she was going way over, and I'm talking, going through his text messages and then commenting as if he would be commenting. So she was telling them, this is not appropriate. Don't say that again. Don't do that again. How dare you say that about somebody's mother? She was really over the top. Okay. And she had a need to control, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But she had this deep-seated need to control, and she did it with her son. He wasn't able to change his clothing or be on the phone or do his homework in his bedroom with his door closed. It had to be wide open, okay, at all times. And he took a snap shot for me, took a picture and brought it to therapy and said, this is how my door stays all day, all night. It's open. My mom won't let me shut the door. Not only did she not allow him to shut his door, but, she also pried into his business at school. Anytime there would be a peer incident or, he wasn't getting along with somebody, she would take it upon herself to call that other child's parent and stir things and try to figure out what's going on. And so by the time I heard everything I needed to hear in therapy for this young man, I thought I referred mom to treatment because mom was the one that needed the therapy, not her 13-year-old son. He actually, I should probably put it this way, he needed the treatment to deal with her because she was the bigger problem. And so in this live chat tonight, you're going to see not just how to use boundaries, but what is wrong with the character and the person who doesn't seem to respect the fact that I am an individual. I have a mind, I have a soul, I have a brain. I have a certain way that I have to run things, or I have a certain way that I see things, or I have a certain way that I interpret things. And it doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It doesn't mean that I am less than just because I'm asking you to respect my space. So we're going to talk about those characters because I know you've had them and you probably have them in your family. It's that character pathology, meaning that it's a person with a personality disorder, a character flaw, a character pathology that not only impacts how you see them, but it also impacts the relationship because they run over you, they minimize you, they dominate you, they helicopter in your life, and it makes it really difficult to maneuver your space and get out of places where you feel trapped. Now, let me also say too, let me add to this dynamic here and say that sometimes within a family where there's toxicity, and the relationship is really difficult to maneuver, there's no boundaries, there's no respect, there's no honesty, none of that. It's just we're family, there's no walls that can allow a sense of safety and privacy. In those kind of households or families, you will notice what we call subsystems, and they tend to be very unstable. A subsystem could be mom and dad. That's a subsystem, the parents. Another subsystem could be grandparents. That's grandpa and grandma. Another subsystem can be siblings, right? That's my sister, that's my brother. Those kind of think of it as bite-size pieces, okay, within a family dynamic. So the subsystem of parents are over there, the subsystem of grandparents, right? And then the subsystem of siblings is over there. In research focused on family dynamics that are dysfunctional, most of the research highlights that these unstable subsystems often includes little to no boundaries. What happens in these subsystems when it is dysfunctional is something, ready for the terms, guys? It's something that we call enmeshment. And that's an inner emotional bond. And it can almost feel like codependency. It can almost feel like a traumatic bond, but enmeshment is there is no space to think, feel, process, experience, right? Learn. There's no space for that. You really do become one, and you become cemented together in a family dynamic that doesn't allow for boundaries. It doesn't allow for space because the subsystem, which are the parents, could have a narcissistic personality, could have an antisocial personality disorder, could be very toxic and domineering, could be, very antisocial and unempathic in a way that says, you're going to do it my way. I don't care if it defies your freedom. I don't care if it minimizes your right to think and feel and behave. You're going to do it my way. And you have a subsystem, mom and dad, or that's another subsystem. If you have a subsystem that's dysfunctional, being enmeshed is going to be hard to get out of. And once you finally, sometimes you have to finally wake up, you get this epiphany, and you may feel like, whoa, all these years I've been dealing with this, I got to get out of this. And so if your eyes become open and your heart becomes opened, you're probably going to want to get away. And that is when most people, most families, most individuals go no contact, period. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to email you. Leave me alone. And no contact is consequence of an enmeshed family that doesn't know how to give you space, that doesn't know how to respect your space and your mind. So we call this part of the dynamic disengagement. Disengagement. And that's really when you emotionally and sometimes entirely detach because you want nothing to do with enmeshed. It's hard to think and breathe and process and live and grow. There's no process of individuation. We've talked about that before in the past. Individuation is a typical process. It usually hits us during adolescence. And individuation is the process by which we kind of, imagine that this is the family, okay? Individual is you slowly pulling away from the family dynamic. And you get further and further and further away to where now you're ready to go off to college. Now you're ready to date and marry. Now you're ready to buy your own apartment, right? Because you've had that process of individuation. Slowly pull away from your family in a healthy way where, you don't have to talk. You don't have to be enmeshed anymore. Well, in very unstable, dysfunctional families, there is no individuation, and there tends to be more disengagement than there is individuation. Individuation is healthy. It says, I feel confident enough to grow, to learn, to experience, and to move on in my own life. And I know my family's back there, and I can always go back to them, and they will always love me the same. That is a healthy dynamic. But in an unhealthy, toxic, dysfunctional dynamic, disengagement is likely to happen, not individuation, but disengagement. You say, you know what? I can't do this anymore. No one's respecting my boundaries. Nobody's respecting my space. Nobody's helping me feel confident in myself. So, you know what? I'm out of here. And that is disengagement. You just pick up and leave, or you plan to leave, or you plan to escape. That is disengagement. Excuse me. My God. Sorry. I swear, sometimes those little babies that come to my office, if they are sick, I always just feel like I'm not going to get sick with you. I'm not, because I'm stronger. I'm the adult. And then I end up as the weakest link, if you will, because then I catch the virus and I'm sick for months. So I apologize for that. In all of my recent live chats, I'm coughing. But I hope that makes sense, guys. Let me do one more thing before we go to the chat box. I can see that you guys are already chatting. You're saying, oh my God, this is interesting. So we're going to get to you in I'm going to get to you in just a minute. But let me throw some things out there, okay? Just for us to think about, in addition to enmeshment, going no contact, and disengagement. Research in psychology on people who have a hard time research on individuals who have a hard time accepting the word no usually have some kind of character pathology because nobody likes to be disappointed. Nobody likes to be rejected. Nobody likes to say, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I am not interested in this right now. For me personally, and I've had to develop this over the past few years, usually we kind of tiptoe, and then we try to, wrestle with ourselves on how to tell people to give us our space. And then we think we have it down, and then we tiptoe some more, we procrastinate, then we kind of minimize. And before you know it, you're standing there really struggling with telling that person no and putting up a boundary when you really shouldn't be. Because some individuals deserve to be told absolutely not. No. Some people need to be told that. Why? Because oftentimes there's a character pathology at the core. Most research on this topic suggests that those who are antisocial, sociopathic, and narcissistic tend to have a very hard time not only accepting no, but also accepting that there are boundaries, rules, and regulations. And that is the way that it has to go. Because most of these individuals feel like they have the right to get what they want. That's typically the narcissistic character. I want what I want. You're what you're what I want, or that is what I want, and I'm going to get it. And so you're going to go along with my plan here. And that is not okay, right? It's controlling. I once had a mom come to my practice when I first started. So many years ago, over 10 years ago, I started my own private practice. Excuse me. And I remember having a mom. She was from an upper class location. She was living amongst celebrities. She was very, what's the word that I'm looking for? She was very astute and well-spoken, smart, but her character was awful. It was awful, And I remember her coming into my practice. It was a different building that I was in. I was in a building where there are other offices. So like a dentist and an insurance agent and a lawyer, So she came to my office. She couldn't find me. She was flustered because she couldn't find my suite. Finally found me, sat down. This is an example of character pathology that has a hard time accepting boundaries and rules. So she came into my office and she sat down in the waiting room. Okay. She never saw, I don't believe, the sign on my wall that says new patients, all patients, all clients, all customers, please take a seat and I will be with you. She totally bypassed that, even though it was posted on the wall right in front of the couch. She bypassed that. She passed another family that my intern was seeing at the time in the other waiting room, because there were 2 waiting rooms in my office. She literally passes the sign on my hallway door that says, do not enter sessions in, sessions, however I put it. Okay, guys, or meeting in session or something like that. So it was up on the wall. I also had another sign up on the wall in the hallway that said cameras in operation, something like that. So you're on surveillance. Okay. There were so many red light stop signs, yellow signs that she could have adhered to, but she did not. She bypassed them, came all the way up to my office door. Okay. And as I'm listening to my client, my eyes go to the bottom of my door and I see her shoes. Okay. I see these red heels that she wore all the time to the office. And I did this to my client because now her privacy, I want her to stop talking because now her privacy is being invaded. The mother knocks on the door. I open the door. She says, I just wanted to let you know that I'm here for my appointment. Is there going to be a long wait? And I left my specific office in the back to step out in the hallway and talk to her. And I said, yes, but you are 30 minutes early. She says, oh, I am. I didn't notice that. I says, yeah, you're 30 minutes early. But if you just go back to the waiting room, take a seat, I'll get to you at your appointment time. That session ended up being me telling her, you cannot bypass the boundaries of this office. I'm going to have to ask you next time to please take a seat and do like everybody else in the waiting room. You are not permitted back in the back because I have a client that you were most likely able to hear what they were saying. That's a violation of their confidentiality. And she got offended. Okay. And this wasn't the first time I had to put up a boundary with her, but that is an example of a character that feels that I want what I want. She wanted to know the time that she was due. She wanted to know how much time she would have to wait. She wanted my undivided attention at that moment. And if that meant bypass all the signs on my walls that told her what she isn't allowed to do or is allowed to do, she didn't care. She came down a long hallway and stood at the door for a while listening. Then she decided to interrupt that client and their session with me by knocking on the door. And that interrupted her time, the client that I was with. And then I had to assert my boundaries for the 1700th time. And so her character pathology was this. She was narcissistic. She was unempathic, right? And she didn't understand the term consent. Consent really is a well thought out authorization. It says, I consent to you. And if you don't have my consent, then you have to pause. And that's the way that has to go. And so I didn't give this former client consent to just walk around my office and just act like she's able to bypass everything that's up. as a boundary. But in her narcissistic personality and inability to be empathic and caring and understanding of everybody in that office, because of her inability to do that, and because of her disorder and character pathology, she had a very hard time accepting that there are rules and boundaries. And, the following sessions with she and her family were rough because she didn't like the fact that I had to create boundaries. It was hard on her. It was hard on her ego. It was hard on her pride. It was hard on her narcissistic behavior. She wasn't used to having to be told no, And so you are unlikely, I'm going to go to the chat box, you are likely to experience this kind of character within your own family. And I know at times, like I have been in my past, you look at that person and you say, what don't you understand here? Like, am I not speaking language? Like, am I not speaking English here? What is wrong with you? Stop, right? And I know you've had that kind of experience because I certainly have myself in my personal life and in my professional life. And it is so very just exhausting, right? Okay, so we're going to talk more about this kind of character, common issues within your family, and why it's so hard to deal with these kind of characters. I'm going to tell you about. I'm going to give you just a little bit of research, and then I'm going to give you tools on how to set boundaries with the character that I just talked about, and also with your family. All right. Okay, let's go to the beginning. A seat at the King's Table with Tanisha. Hello and welcome. So glad to see you back tonight. Kim, hello. James McDonald, Orlando, Elizabeth, and Ellie Wynn. Hello to all of you and welcome back. Elizabeth says, hi, my problem with toxic people that they absolutely don't respect boundaries. And if it is a narcissist, then a boundary is like a red towel to a bull for them. Yeah, that's an excellent way to put that, Elizabeth. I totally agree. A narcissist wants to constantly feel in control. And feeling in control means that they are above you. And being above you means that they are able to get what they want. And sadly, a narcissist constantly loses touch with the fact that you have to follow along sometimes with everybody else. That doesn't mean that you have to go along with this kind of boss syndrome, as you will. You don't have to be a sheep that follows all the other sheeps, but there are times and in certain situations where following along is wise. Following along is respectful. Following along and getting consent is what builds the connection between two people, right? And so if I'm your therapist, I've got to get your consent to work with you. And I also have to be able to get your consent in other matters as well. And consent has to happen over and over and over again. That also happens in a relationship between two people, right? A romantic relationship where, that person and you have to continue to give each other consent on various things, right? And so what a narcissist really fails to understand is that if I haven't given you consent, you got to pause. And that's basically what I'm demanding from you, consent. And narcissists don't like that. So yes, it is like a towel, that you put down in front of a bull, because when you say consent, authorization, boundary, rules, regulations, they snap. They don't want to know that they have to follow those kind of things. Rules, boundaries, consent, respect, authorization, all of that doesn't apply to them. You know how sometimes if you go into a place of business and you stand in a busy line, think about how you have felt when the person behind you is too close to you, right? Oh, I hate that. That's like the thing where I don't know if I'm claustrophobic or what. I know my brother definitely is claustrophobic. He really has panic attacks because of closed in spaces. But I don't like someone standing behind me in line and I feel like you're so close to me that I can feel your energy. I don't want that. I don't like that. Back up, And so, that's the experience of a narcissist. When you say no, it's, back up. I don't want you this close to me like that. And, Narcissists have to understand, Elizabeth, I'm glad you put it that way. They have to understand, you can't stand up on me like that. You have to back up. They hate that, Okay, let's keep moving here. Cheyenne, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, thank you. I wish tranquility for you too. We need that, right? Starburst, hello and welcome. Great Sabbath day to you too. Yeah, MS, hello and welcome, says, I am so psyched for this topic. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're welcome. We're going to keep moving because I think you're going to love the rest of the content here. My friend Shmita, I hope I'm always saying that correct. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Flyboy5, good to see you and welcome. Says, hi, Tamara. So looking forward to this. That is awesome. Good to know. Ronald Zion, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Brooklyn Kappa 1. I'm going to say it that way from now on. Yes, we are live. We are live. I love that. That's good excitement, Brooklyn. I love that. Fairy Girl with the dabs. Dawn 1. Sylvia Long Jones. Love Jones. I'm sorry about that. Welcome to all of you. Good to see you. James McDonald says, a life without boundaries is like a building without a strong foundation. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Boundaries protect us from jumping into things too fast, impulsively. Boundaries allows us to respect one another so we can understand each other. Boundaries helps us be safe from crime and darkness and evil and bad situations where we could get hurt, right? Boundaries really are, and I agree, James McDonald, they are the foundation of healthy relationships and situations. You really have to know what the boundary is in almost all situations that you find yourself in order to survive. Consider what it's like when, you were going into a class, think about college classes. You were going into a classroom full of students and the professor is there talking to you and engaging you and really trying to get you to understand and learn things. When you come into that classroom, when you come into the classroom, you've got to scan your room, right? You've got to scan it. Oh, okay, that's another student down there. Oh, we have some different people over there and brother boy over there sitting over there with his earphones on. And that's Kathy over there, right? Like you really do have to scan the room and then you sit, right? You listen to what the professor is saying or the educator, the teacher, and you know that, okay, I feel like this is a room where I need to be taking notes. I realize this is a room where I can't put my feet up on the desk, right? Boundaries helps you navigate every single second of an encounter. So you are very right, James McDonald. Narcissists, sociopaths, and individuals who feel like they have the right to do what they want to do, they don't have those boundaries because they don't take the time to understand that they are important. They force things, they're impulsive, they're careless. And that is the big issue with them. Okay, Kim. Hello, Kim. Good to see you back. Kim says, just received a police wellness check last week from an in-law who we have no contact with for 4 years. She finally sent police over to check on us after a family emergency text. Okay. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Because I think it's a good thing. But I can see if you've been no contact with her for 4 years, how that can kind of feel stripping, you can kind of feel like, how dare you? I haven't seen you in 4 years and you're going to send a wellness check. At the same time, some people ask for wellness checks because they can hear something in you. They can sense something is off, or they're concerned and they want to help you, or they want to make sure that you are okay. So a wellness check is difficult, right? Because we therapists have to do it as well. Sometimes if, let's say, for example, I have a child text me, and then we're going to go back to the chat box and then back to the content. If I have a child that contacts me, and this has happened in the past, they will text me, Miss Tamara, my dad is screaming in the living room. He keeps chasing after something in the air, and I don't know what to do to calm him down because he's throwing things and tearing up the living room. The last thing I'm going to do is go fix my dinner, have a conversation with my loved ones, watch some Judge Judy, maybe some Wheel of Fortune, and then tell my client, I'll see you next session. That's not going to happen. Sometimes, and this is my boundary, if I get a child that comes to me and says, Miss Tamara, whether that's through a text, a phone call, whatever, A, B, and C is happening. I don't know what to do. I'm in danger. How do I calm this situation? My boundary is this. Then I have to take things into my own hands, and I'm going to call either the police or a crisis line, and I'm going to see to it that that system, police or crisis, goes to your home to ensure that that household is under control, because I'm put in that position of power to do so. It's my legal and ethical right to do so. So, Kim, it's really difficult. I see where you're going. I think I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, there's a duty to protect at the same time. And I do see the rest of your comments here in the chat box. It sounds like a really difficult situation, but if you can look at it from different angles, that might be helpful, So I hope that makes sense, and I hope it's helpful, just that I broke all that down for you. Brianne D, hello and welcome. Good to see you back in a live chat. Shanita Brown, hello and welcome. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Correct me if I'm not. Shanita Brown says, my wife did a wellness check and alerted my grandmother, and she's 78, about being scared for me because the same thing happened to her cousin. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. You're talking with Cam. I totally get it. Wellness checks feel invasive. Is that the word I'm looking for? They feel kind of like somebody's prying for information. It feels like your boundary is not being respected. At the same time, if there's a mental health condition and there are genuine concerns, then there are no longer any boundaries, because now I have to ensure that everybody is safe. And I have to do this with a mind and a heart of compassion and care and concern. If you feel that it's retaliatory or evil or manipulative or controlling, can you really prove that, right? And if you think it is, okay, but it's a difficult situation, because if somebody doesn't step in, something terrible can go wrong. And what's the least that can happen with a wellness check, right? If you're okay, the police and the crisis center is going to walk away. They're not going to take you anywhere. But if you're unsafe and you need help, you're going straight to the hospital. So maybe look at it that way as well. Sun and Sunflowers, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Sun and Sunflower says, I asked my mom, why do I need the door open at all times? Why can't I have some privacy? A child doesn't deserve privacy. That's what she says. Yeah, I don't like that either. A child doesn't need to be left to their own devices for way too long. But does a child deserve privacy? Absolutely. He's got to learn some things, and he and she, I should say. There has to be some space to learn, and a child has the right to have their door pushed up, have their door closed at various times. A child who's sleeping, close their door. A child who's napping, close their door. A child who's on the phone with their best friend, close their door. They have a right to do that. If you ask me, if the child is mature, able to understand boundaries, and you are teaching proper and healthy ways of communicating, you can trust them then to close their door. You really have to do this on a case-by-case basis, right? And you have to kind of consider some ethical pieces to this as well. Is it really ethical that I force them to keep their door open at all times? Is it really ethical? Is it really valuable to their freedom that I keep them locked in a room with the door open all day? So there's different ways that you can look at that. Okay, The Good Glow, hello and welcome. Glad that you are part of this conversation as well. Good to see you. Gary Bennett, good to see you as well. Welcome back. Okay, hold on. Orlando says, bear with me. Okay, guys, I'm trying to get through this. And then we're going to go back to the content. Orlando says, it's crazy that normal people are the ones to seek therapy and not the toxic people. Well, let me clarify that. Orlando, you can't be saying stuff like that. I get where you're going, though. I do. The individuals who come to therapy to deal with the unstable ones, yes, there's a lot of them in therapy, right? Like, sometimes a therapist has to have a therapist. Why? Because we therapists are in front of dysfunctional, abnormal, toxic things all the time. And so the only normalcy that we can have and the only coping that we can develop over time is that which is found in the office of another therapist, of a colleague, of a friend, right? That is true, Orlando. But then there are also some people who who are unstable and they have a character pathology and they totally refuse going to treatment. Part of that, and we're talking about this tonight with sociopaths, antisocial individuals, and narcissists, the issue is they don't feel like they are the problem because their world is the bigger world of importance, right? It's you that's in their world. You are in their world creating trouble, not the other way around. And so why get therapy, right? Yeah. T Bunny Shy, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. T Bunny Shy says, exactly. We have to self-differentiate, be a separate self somehow. Yes, you do. It's healthy. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Michelle Lynn, hello and welcome back. I was glad to see you. Jen Green and Sean Hazel, hello. Thank you so much for that. And welcome to the both of you. Cam says disengagement seemed to be the only solution for a few family members. Toxicity seems to follow them. Yeah, disengagement sometimes is a form of survival, right? Disengagement could be just like taking off a seatbelt, if you will, right? Hit the button, I'm free. Because if a person is not healthy and they're not stable, right, then you have to disengage. And sometimes that's survival. Honda, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. I don't ever remember seeing you in a chat. Good to see you. Honda says, whenever I set boundaries with my narcissistic family, I automatically have mental issues for criticism that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I automatically have mental issues for criticism that doesn't make any sense. Right. So they're pushing you back, right? They're saying, no, we're not going to accept your boundary because of A, B, and C. Is that kind of what you're saying? If that's the case, that's a typical behavior. And as a matter of fact, we're going to go back to the content on your comments because I think it's very important. Because if you try to set a boundary with a family who's enmeshed, or if you try to set a boundary in a family where your space is not respected, they only have a few ways to come back at you. And the only ways that I can think of in the moment would be they pull the "you have mental issues," card, or the "you don't deserve privacy" card, or "since when did you start doing A, B, and C? You never told us we have to call you before we come over." There's only but so many cards they can pull. Research in psychology, and I've seen this in my practice as well, suggests that boundaries are the most difficult in families where there's alliances, where there's coalitions, right? And where there's favorites. So let me break this down a little bit. An alliance usually entails two people. It could be an alliance between your brother and your dad. It can be a relationship or an agreement between your sister and your mother. Or it can be an agreement and a connection between your parents. That's subsystem, mom and dad. And when an alliance happens, two people have the same thoughts, they have the same feelings, they have the same behaviors, they have the same outlook on certain things. And so let's say here you are coming into the picture, setting some healthy boundaries and demanding that your boundaries be respected. That alliance, those two people have power between them to come against you. Does that make sense? And so it weakens your defense a little bit, because in a very toxic, dysfunctional family dynamic, if grandma and grandpap says there's not going to be any boundaries in this family, then you're going to feel pushed back, and they're going to minimize your attempt to set boundaries. They're going to minimize your desire and need to be free of their criticisms of you, right? And so that alliance can be a really sneaky, manipulative thing. Coalitions can also be that way as well. Coalitions tends to include more than two people. And it's the same dynamic, but it could be all of dad's side of the family are against me. Or all of my sisters and my brother go against me because I told them, I'm not going to share who I'm dating. I'm not going to share that yet. When we get engaged or when we get married, you'll know. There are some families like that. I know you know that. I've had them in my office and I'm like, oh my God, that probably wasn't a good thing to do. But some people do that because they don't want you in their business. So a coalition could be, you know, all of your sisters coming against you because you didn't tell them you were getting married, for example, right? Or maybe both sets of grandparents coming against you because of something. So alliances, coalitions, and favorites in toxic family dynamics, if you try to put up a boundary, you know, you're going to have some issues. Now, let me highlight favorites really quickly because you may have a sibling who is the favorite between the two of you. And, excuse me, and being a favorite means that they're going to be pulled into a coalition. They're going to be pulled into an alliance or a dynamic where they're not going to respect you either, you know, and you put up a boundary and that favorite child may feel like, I'm the favorite child. Nobody's going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. So, you know, good luck with that boundary you just set down. You know, I know you guys know what that means. The next thing that research highlights, and I've also seen this in my practice, is there's a lot of, in these kind of families where boundaries are not respected, there's a lot of reliance upon you for emotional and psychological support. So there may be adultification, right? I'm growing you up as fast as I can because I need you to be the adult of this household. Parentification is another one. I need you to raise your sister, your brother, and your cousin, you know, because the parents can't do it. So I'm asking you to do it. So there's a lot of reliance on you for emotional support, you know, and adultification is one of them. You know, I know I'm the parent. I know I need to be raising you, but can I just talk to you about my bad day at work? Can I just talk to you about, you know, feeling depressed and grieving over my divorce? You know, can you just talk to me about the events in the world? Did you watch the news today? Did you take the trash out? Did you fold all the laundry? Did you fix my bed for me? Right? All of these things that adults do can be placed on you. And if you try to come up against that and say, you know what? No, we're done with this. I am no longer being the adult in your life, and I am no longer being parentified here. Those are your kids. You can guarantee you're going to be set up, right? And that's either going to be someone slamming the door on you. That's going to be somebody talking about you. Just be ready for it, you know, because that's part of the dynamic. Let me also say too, that sometimes if you say no, and if you put up a boundary, think about the woman, the client that I had that I shared with you at the very beginning. Consider saying no to someone who feels like they have the right to be, you know, a part of all your personal business. There's going to be unnecessary anger. They're going to be hostile because to them, when you're saying, nope, I'm not going to share that data. No, I'm not going to share that information with you right now. No, I don't feel comfortable being open with you about that right now. It's for people who are controlling and they have a character pathology. It's like dangling something in their face, you know, guys. It's like, you know, here's my information, but I refuse to give it to you. And so what happens is the other individual gets angry. And if, like myself with my previous client, if you're going to bypass all the bells and whistles that tells you to take a seat in the waiting room and I will be with you, if you bypass that, I'm going to have to set a boundary, and you're not going to like that boundary because I'm either tired of setting boundaries or the small boundaries I've put up aren't registering. So I've got to set an even firmer boundary. And that's where people end up getting angry. Those who do not like boundaries, they get angry, they get hostile, and sometimes retaliatory. And that's how you know there's a character pathology. Oh, you want to retaliate because I've set this boundary? No. But I'm sure you guys know what I mean. Individuals who do not respect your boundaries, they also tend to be impulsive. So they act before they think. They speak before they think, you know, and they also tend to have intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts for these individuals may be, why won't she tell me who she's dating? You know, why won't he share the job that he's been working at for 15 years with me? Why do we all of a sudden have to call you before we visit you? You know, why all of a sudden are you not accepting my text messages, even though it's 2 a.m. You used to, you know, these kind of characters have questions, gripes, complaints when it comes to boundaries, you know, and I know you know what I mean. Lastly, in this category, those individuals who have a character pathology, they feel like they deserve what they want, they don't have to respect your space and your boundaries. These individuals tend to have this deep-seated defiance and rebellion on the inside of them. And it may feel like no matter how many boundaries you're setting up, it's still not enough. Why? Because they have an internal rebellion and an internal place of defiance. And so you may put a boundary here and they still not accept you. You may put a boundary a little higher up, they still may not accept that. And you may go to the top, for example, just to give you a visual, and say, you know what, this is done. We're completely done here because you don't respect me. They still may have a desire to be rebellious and defiant. Consider a no contact order, right? Or a protection from abuse order. You know, those cases where you've put out a PFA, you've had the police set something in stone, and they are not to come within so many feet of you. And yet they find some way to bypass it every time. Every time. Anytime my clients have had to get a PFA or a no contact, some kind of order, I always find that the other person somehow finds some way around the law. And that's either by sending text or email messages under different names. It could be manipulating friends and family against you, right? It could also be something like, I can stand outside and see your home, but I'm nowhere within those parameters set by the PFA, right? There's an internal sense of rebellion and defiance with them. They don't respect you or the boundaries that you put up. Now, let me give you some research just briefly before I go to the chat box and then give you guys the remaining tips on this topic. How do I set a boundary? So we're going to get to that. But some research suggests that boundaries may differ when it comes to attachment styles. So consider this. Let's say you have a secure attachment with your parent. I feel like I have a secure attachment with my own mother. I feel like I have a secure attachment with my own siblings. So consider what my boundaries most likely will be. If you have a secure attachment with family, if you have a secure attachment with your parents, boundaries are going to be healthy. And you're going to be able to say, Mom, I love you. Dad, I love you. You know, sis, I love you. Bro, I love you. But this is kind of where I need to have some space. And my older brother is like that. You know, he loves us and he spends time with us. And then guess what? At a certain time, he has to go and take a nap. He has to go and pick up his children. He has to go and tend to his wife. He has to go and do other things in his day. Healthy boundaries. Now, if you have, however, an anxious attachment, an avoidant attachment, you most likely suffer with people pleasing. I say suffer with, like it's a condition. But people pleasing may be your thing. And so if your attachment style is insecure, anxious, or avoidant, you can look at that and say, oh, no wonder my boundaries are so low, because I never really developed a healthy attachment style. Let me also say, too, in this research, there's also boundaries and how to set them and how to use them in your life correctly. That tends to be generational for some cultures. It tends to be very generational. And you may have, you know, my throat is getting dry. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. You may have great-great-grandma, excuse me. You may have great-great-grandma who somehow didn't have really good boundaries and somehow didn't seem to set in stone that this is a boundary. So what happens? She passes that on to your grandmother. Your grandmother doesn't know how to set boundaries. What happens? She passes that on to your mom. Your mom never really learned how to have boundaries, and all of her relationships were all over the place. Romantic, personal, family, work, the list goes on. All her relationships are a mess. So that's mom, right? She passes that on to you, and here you are having a really hard time setting a boundary. And what happens? You kind of transfer that lack of boundaries to your sibling, right? Especially if you're an older sibling, and it continues to go. So some research suggests that boundary setting tends to be generational or transmittable over different parts of our generations. I hope I said that correctly. Over different parts of our lives throughout our lifespan, I'll put it that way. Having a problem with boundaries can be generational, and it can be transmitted throughout generations. One last thing before I go back to the chat box to take a little bit of a break here and to engage you. There are some people who can't accept no. And there's three most important things that I found as I'm going through the research on this. The number one thing was sociopathy and narcissism. So those tend to be the individuals who have a really hard time with boundaries. And we're not talking about somebody who gets offended and, slams the door, gets angry because you said, I'm not going to do this anymore. Or, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't do that. You put up a boundary. We're not talking about that kind of a person who may be frustrated, but we're talking about a hostile, angry person who gets very triggered by your boundary. And it creates arguments, conflict, confrontations, right? Retaliatory behavior. These individuals tend to be very unstable. So research highlights that they tend to be narcissistic. They have a deep need for control. They have to have control. And then they also have difficulty with managing disappointment. So those were the three important things I saw in the research that's happening to an individual who can't accept your boundary. Narcissistic tendencies, having a hard time with disappointment of all kinds. And these individuals also struggle with a need to control. Okay, let me go to the chat box, guys, and then I'm going to give you tips on how to set healthy boundaries and what therapists think you need to do. And then we will wrap up. T Bunny Shy says, they are unsafe people. They left me, no choice. Yeah, sometimes you have to move on, right? You may not want to, it may not be easy, but you have to. James McDonald says, I can relate to this topic completely. Family snooping, taking belongings and your money without permission, basically doing whatever they please, and you dare not question their poor ethics. Exactly. Question their poor ethics, James McDonald, and guess what happens? Kaboom. There's going to be arguments, probably some envy, some anger, envy, hostility, frustration, anxiety. Have you ever seen a helicopter parent in operation? I know we know what it means, but it's a whole different thing when you see it, I remember many years ago when I was in college, my second or third year of college, I had to do a project. And my project was to study boundaries and control. And I ended up accepting employment and a learning experience at a daycare center. The daycare center offered teaching, it offered, a daycare, that kind of thing. So it was really like a learning center. And I remember watching some of the parents, dropping their kids off at the front door, which it looks entirely too difficult, right? Because you're saying goodbye to this little person that you don't want to leave behind, and sometimes they're crying and kicking and whining and complaining, But I remember standing in the background, just kind of observing how the day went in a daycare. And I remember watching different parents drop their kids off. Well, helicopter parents tended to show that they did not trust the staff. They tended to be quite argumentative and angry and confrontational. They tended to make small things a big deal, like a scratch on a foot or, a scratch on a face that probably happened when the baby did something to itself, right, in some form, how babies can be. But I remember observing this environment thinking, these helicopter parents, they can't accept no. They can't accept boundaries. They're not accepting an explanation. What do they want? And it's almost like they felt, the parents that I'm talking about, they felt like they had the complete right to tear apart the daycare workers because they're paying them. And because they felt like they deserved to be told what happened, or, they felt like they had the right to be accepted. No boundaries from the daycare. That's not the way these parents saw the relationship. I need to know everything every day. What happened? Why did you do that? Who did it? What's his name? Who's his boss? Right? And so James McDonald, just to your point, if you challenge that, it's not going to be a good thing, because Challenging that means that other person has to abide by rules, regulations, structure, and they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. Ellie Wynn says, I was an enslaved doormat. Trash can. Oh, God. Ellie Wynn, I'm sorry. Honda says, and they use some religious justifications. Yep, you're right. You're right. I saw some things growing up in the church. I saw some things when I was in college, and I would go to mass, and I would go to Baptist churches and Pentecostal churches and youth groups. And I also did some missionary work with an organization in my local area. I was just a really active young person in the realm of religion. So I had a lot of first eye views, if you were, a bird eye view of a lot of the dynamics. And you're right, they do use religious justifications. Some of the religious justifications I've heard is honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days will be many in the land. And really what that means in the King James Version and in the wait, am I saying this right? Yeah, the King James Bible. Did I say that? I don't know. I can't remember. I'm so tired. In the King James Bible, that scripture is there to encourage kids of all ages to respect and honor their parent. Fine. I agree with that. However, if you say, Mom, I'm sorry, we're just going to sleep in today and just kind of take it easy. It's a Sunday. It's a snowy day. We're just going to stay home. Can you visit us on Friday? Right? Then your mom may say, well, I cooked dinner for you guys. And you may say, Mom, we appreciate that so much. But is there any way that you can kind of like just wrap it up and we get it on Tuesday? Your mom may say, no, it's not good when it's, been in the refrigerator for so many days. And you may say, oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Well, can you like eat it? And then we make it at a different time, you and me. And then your mom may get flustered and angry. And guess what? Here comes the religious scripture. You know what? The Bible says, honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days will be many. Right? And I've seen that. And I know you've seen that. Honda, you've seen it. And it's like, that may be true, but this is not the dynamic, or that may be true. And I truly want to honor you. But does that mean that honoring puts a limit on my boundaries, on my need for space? No, it doesn't. Right? My mother's father was that way. He was a pastor for, I don't know how many years, like 30, 40. And he felt the need to lord, and that lording was also entwined with religious pride. And so it's that hovering that he would do over my mom and all her mistakes and all of her decisions. And I remember seeing some of this and being told of some of this, very judgmental individual. And so Honda, you're very right about that. Okay, I feel like I'm way behind in the chat box. Patrick Black One, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Patrick Black One says, "Oh my God, I finally caught your live. I'm glad that you did, and I'm hoping that it is helpful." Let me scroll just a little bit, guys. James McDonald, okay, I'll read this one. James McDonald says, "When you give toxic people an inch, they will always take 10 miles." That's so true. You have to be willing and ready to say no. No. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. Longevity Rituals, glad to see you. Welcome back. Says stalkers with no boundaries. Shaking my head. Yes, stalkers have absolutely no boundaries, and it depends on who you're dealing with, right? Are you dealing with an intimacy stalker, which is a person who needs your love and affection, but in order to get that, they're constantly contacting you. And even when you said no, they're constantly contacting you, Are you dealing with a predator? Are you dealing with, a controlling stalker? So you really have to know which kind of stalker you're dealing with, but a lot of them have absolutely no boundaries. Mom Tude, hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. Jeanette, good to see you. Welcome. Good to see you. Okay, we're going to keep moving here. Jen Green says, what if you tell them no? Then they go no contact. Well, my attitude is always, if you can accept my no, then I'm going to say no to you even more. And we're going to just close the door here, because you have to be able to accept my no. And I don't need to feel guilty for saying no. And I don't need you acting like I've done something terribly wrong to you because I've said no, right? That's something to think about, right? Gary Bennett says, Tamara, you are always there for us. No, let me try this again, Gary Bennett. Tamara, you always there for us, sick or not. In Australia, people would have a sickle. You are wonderful. Thank you for that. That's so sweet. Yes, that is true. My mom, a couple weeks ago when I had pneumonia, Gary, she was like, what do I need to do to get you to stop working? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Because I always feel like, and I'm not a people pleaser. Believe me when I say that I'm not a people pleaser. But I always feel like if I have strength, I should be able to go the extra mile to do my job, to help, to support other people. So that's just who I am for now, unless somebody changes me. But thank you for that. That's so sweet. The good glow, you're my last one before I go back to the chat. The content, excuse me, so that we can wrap this up. The good glow says, tried to develop a closer relationship with my maternal aunt and started noticing the entitlement and criticism of me. No, thank you, auntie. I'm good. No wonder she and my narc mom are distant. Well, it is what it is, right? Sometimes you can pull people into your circle and then you want to push them right back out, right? Because they don't understand what it is that they're doing to you, and quite frankly, they don't care. Okay, so how do we set boundaries with these people? It's taken me a very long time, from the age of 14 to maybe the age of 30, And so now I am here 10 years later from my 30s or so. And I know what I need to do, because if I don't, then I'm going to be inconvenienced. I'm going to be bitter. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be confrontational because my boundaries are being trampled and I feel that, and I'm not doing anything about it, right? And so that's kind of most likely what you've experienced as well. Like, when you're being trampled over, and that's a very bad feeling. So the first thing that I suggest, and research also backs this up, is you want to master what we call differentiation. Differentiation. And really what that is it's being able to be a part of the world, being able to be a part of your family, being able to be a part of a relationship, but still holding true to yourself and saying, this is my independence. This is my space. This is how I see things. This is how things should go in my life. I'm okay with that while I set boundaries with everybody else. So differentiation is the process by which we communicate with these different people in our world and these different subsystems, but we can still hold true to ourselves. So you want to master that, right? I've been in situations where I'm in a group of people, I'm in a crowd of people, I'm in an educational environment, in a seminar where we're all learning. And I notice that people follow each other. They'll raise their hand if they see somebody else raise their hand. If somebody coughs, maybe 2 minutes later, somebody else is coughing. If somebody gets up and walks out of the room to go to the bathroom, so many minutes or hours later, here comes somebody else doing the same thing. We are way more followers, some of us, than we realize. It's only when you can really be mindful and pay attention to your own behavior that you can learn whether or not you are a follower or a leader. And if you tend to be the follower, you really want to master differentiation, where I can be a part of this large political group of people. I can be a part of this large educational seminar. I can be a part of this YouTube channel and be in the chat box with all these different people, but I also maintain my individuality. I maintain my boundary. I maintain my standards, and I also maintain my values. That is differentiation. The other piece is try to work on realistic dependence on others. When people don't have respect for your boundaries, I'll put it that way, it can really cause you to depend on people who seem nice, who seem supportive, who seem stable. The most important thing you want to do is find people who respect you, maintain that relationship, set the boundary at the very beginning of that relationship. Learn how to set a boundary in any part of the relationship in a way that is lighthearted, loving, caring, And sometimes you do have to be firm, right? Whatever the case, you want to foster a realistic dependence on the other person. I love you, but I can also go over here and be okay. I care about you, but I can also go over here and not have an opinion because my opinion seems to hurt you. You know, I can make this relationship work because I want to see my grandchildren, right? So develop over time a realistic reliance or dependence upon other people. The other thing here too is look for opportunities. Look for opportunities to protect your boundaries and assert your authority and to assert your consent and authorization for things. Look for opportunities, right? And sometimes that can be really difficult. I have trouble with that. Even with driving, I have trouble sometimes just asserting my boundary. Yes, that was my stop sign. And yes, I was supposed to have gone first, but you've taken it, so you go ahead, you know? And then there are other times where I will proceed into an intersection where it's my turn and a car is still coming and I have to blow on them to let them know you are now trying to drive while I am trying to make a turn on my stop sign. So sometimes you do have to find opportunities and take them, find opportunities and take them to exert your control, to practice setting boundaries that are healthy. The other thing is, in the moment or after the situation, ask yourself why you share so much, why you are a people pleaser, why you feel the need to now put up a boundary. Why didn't this occur in the past? So some people are people pleasers and followers, or they're too afraid to speak up and say anything for so many years. And then, you know, let's say it started in adolescence and now you're 70 and you want to set a boundary. So you want to ask yourself, why do I want to set a boundary now? What is it that I'm trying to get at? What is my plight here? What is my goal? You know, and you also want to ask yourself, when you are in the midst of people who are controlling, why can't I speak up? Why can't I speak up? Why can't I say no? Why do I feel the need to kind of just like sit back here and be okay with everything and not have much to say? The heart, the mind, our intuition, it all works together for a reason. And if you're in the realm of a person and you feel like they're dominating, they're controlling, they're not allowing you that differentiation of self, they're not allowing you that independence, they're not allowing you that space to say no, right? Then you have to pause and ask yourself, why? Am I afraid of them? Am I intimidated? Am I tired? Am I just whatever, fill in the blank, right? So it's important to do that. You also want to work on strengthening your sense of self, you know, like lifting weights. Strengthen your sense of self. This is me, that is you. And I feel this way, I think this way, and that is you. And flex that muscle. Flex that muscle. Use it when you need to use it. You know, it's hard to build something from the bottom up if you don't have the right tools or use it. So, you know, I often suggest somehow working on strengthening your sense of self. Also engage in mindfulness. I was trying to remember the other ones that I wanted to give you. Engage in mindfulness. Mindfulness kind of, you know, it's not that I'm going to sit here and hum and breathe all day. Sometimes mindfulness is I'm going to be mindful of what's in front of me on my dinner plate, and I'm going to eat and swallow and think, right? I'm going to be mindful of the fact that I'm having this conversation with you right now, and my emotions are good. You know, I'm going to be mindful that I'm getting frustrated and hostile because I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, right? Practice mindfulness, pausing and asking yourself, what is happening in this moment? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And is this good or bad? Those can be good mindfulness questions to ask yourself in the moment, or even following an engagement with somebody, you know? The other thing is role play what you're going to say to the person that you're trying to set a boundary with. I think it's okay to role play before you even go to the person. Let's say, for example, your dad who's cold and callous, you know, he called your work, your place of employment, because he wanted to know why you didn't get car insurance. Okay. And that can wait till later when you get off from work. That doesn't have to be a conversation that's used for now. What is this, right? But let's say your dad goes ahead and calls your place of work, talks to your boss, complains about you a little bit to your boss, and then gets you on the phone and asks you why you haven't gotten car insurance yet, right? So let's say you get off from work, you go home, you're kind of flabbergasted because you can't believe that this is what your dad did to you today. So how can you assert yourself in a powerful way? You can say to yourself in a mirror or process it within your mind, Dad, I appreciate you wanting to protect me, but I have to ask you to please respect my boundaries when it comes to my work. I can't have you calling and talking to my manager and then go from there, right? And you can role play what you're going to say. Role play that with yourself so that when you finally do say it, it sounds confident, firm, concrete, and well thought out. The other thing is you may develop over time a dependent personality where you kind of lean on other people who are stronger than you, or you lean on this person over here because they set better boundaries. So if you find yourself becoming dependent, that's where you want to learn about boundaries, get some books on boundaries, reach out to a therapist, make sure that you are working those muscles of independence so that you can feel the power that you need. I'll put it that way. So that you can feel the power that you need to keep moving forward. And lastly, in this characteristic is choose and maintain good and healthy relationships. The more relationships you have around you that's negative and manipulative and confrontational, the harder it's going to be to set a boundary. And that's going to wear you out over time. So you want healthy relationships and you want to maintain them. This is a lot, right, guys? A topic on boundaries really does encompass self-esteem. You have to have confidence because confidence is the force that's behind your asking of respect and boundaries. Maybe I should go over that. Maybe. What I say? I don't even know if I can repeat it. I don't remember now. But play this back if you need to go back to that. But, that's important. The other thing that's also important is listening to people who are not, unbiased. I'll put it that way. Listening to people who are unbiased. That's another important thing that you need to do to maintain healthy boundaries. Go to the person who has no stake in the deal, that has no impact, and they can give you some sound, wise advice, But this is complicated. There's a lot of pieces to boundaries, and that's what I was going to say earlier. It really requires your confidence, self-efficacy, right? Feeling that you have the ability to do something right. It also impacts your ability to trust other people. It impacts your ability to cling and hold hands with people who need you and love you and care about you, right? So boundaries are really important. It's not just I'm putting up a barrier. It's I've decided, I've thought it out. Here's my boundary. Here's how I'm going to assert my boundary, and here's how I want you to respect it. And that's literally the process of setting healthy boundaries. Okay, let me go to the chat box and just engage a little bit of you, and then we're going to go. Ronald Zion says the sociopathic narcissist knew exactly what she was doing. I mean, if you have a person who's a sociopath or a narcissist, it's really easy for them to, number one, get offended, challenge your boundary, and try to get around your boundary in some form or fashion. But they absolutely know what they were doing. They absolutely know what they are doing. Fairy Girl, thank you for that. She says, we all want to guard Miss Tam. Thank you. Thank you. That's so sweet of you. Honda says she has entitlement and enmeshment and has dark, malignant, narcissistic levels of control. Ooh, that's a mouthful. And if I don't submit to her control, it's instant psychopathic punishment. Yes, it's retaliation, right? Punishment. Oh, you didn't let me come over your house and bring the food that I fixed for you? I'm not going to answer your phone calls for a whole week. Whoa. I'm not going to answer your phone calls for a whole week, another issue of retaliation or just having a hard time accepting no could be, you didn't answer my phone call earlier today, so I'm not going to call you anymore. The ball is in your court now. I'm not going to call you anymore. It's so childish and so immature, right? Okay, looking for comments without falling asleep. I'm tired, but it's been a long week for my family, so that's part of the reason why, with my mom being sick, you know. Jeanette, I think I welcomed you. Jeanette says, healthy boundaries in toxic dynamics, listening to Tamara and everyone today. When setting boundaries goes wrong, anger and toxic family dynamics. Yes, thank you for that. That illumination, that's what I'm going to call it. Thank you. Patrick Black 1, thank you so much for that super chat. I appreciate you. He says, I grew up in a church cult and some of us left. Exactly. My mom left. My grandfather was just like, oh, so you left the church? And then my mom was like, Dad, I'll come do church with you. Then my mom looked around and saw his new wife and her family and her cliques. And my grandfather was just having a hard time up there in the pulpit. And my mom was like, adios amigos, Dad. I can't do this either. So my mom actually got into a pattern of, and I don't know who this may help, but I'm going to share it with you. My mom got into a pattern of finding remote churches, and she would go online and be a part of Saturday and Sunday worship sessions, praise sessions, some lecturing, the list will go on. And I would just be so excited. She followed Dr. Charles Stanley, the late Dr. Charles Stanley. She followed him a lot. Billy Graham, Franklin Graham. She followed a lot of other pastors, Noel Jones, the list just goes on. And that was her way of staying connected to her faith and her way of walking with God, you know? So Patrick Black 1, I know we're speaking the same language. I know we are. Michelle Lynn says, I'm very low contact with all of my family. They don't allow me to be myself, and they are honestly bullies. Yes, absolutely. Yep. People who can't accept no, people who can't stand boundaries, they are bullies. And some of them tend to be very confrontational, let me tell you. All right. I'm looking for new comments. The Good Glow says, any advice dealing with a narc boss? The best weapon that I have is his predictability. I can seem to anticipate his next move before he retaliates. Wow. He's out of lifelines and I'm out of patience. Oh, I don't blame you. I'd have to know a little bit more just to get that information from you, so that I can give you insights and information. But to deal with a narcissistic boss, the best thing is to kind of play the low road, right? Ride out that low road, be humble and modest, share your opinion, share your thoughts and your concepts, but tweak it in a way where you're not making it sound like you know more than him. You're not making it sound like you do better than him. Try to make things equal as much as you can. And you may have to pump it up a couple notches just to make him feel like he's great. But you really have to know the kind of narcissist you're dealing with. And you also have to practice these tactics on your boss. I hope that helps for what it's worth. I hope that's helpful. Sammy D, I didn't say hello to you, or did I? I don't know. Hello, welcome. Always good to see you. Isaac Flores, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Isaac Flores says, oh my God, when they're literally breathing on your neck, so annoying. I know. You just want to say, can you back up a little bit? You know, right? But you don't want to be rude. So here's what I usually do. I take a few steps forward, okay? And sometimes I'm like, oh, thank God, they're not going to. And the next thing I know, they get up on me again. And I'm like, you know? So yeah, I don't know how to deal with that in a way that's therapeutic. I got to figure that out. James McDonald says he's the same way. He doesn't like people invading his personal space. Yeah. I don't like that. Please let me breathe. Inequitable Table. Did I say that right? Hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Says, and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. She goes on to say, my two sisters have been so disrespectful to me for the past few years. Then my parents allied with them. Yeah. My mom justifies their disrespect. I feel like a scapegoat. Of course you do. That's a dynamic, right? Alliance, a coalition. It's awful, right? And it's not easy to get in the middle of that and say, wait a minute, what are you guys doing? You know? So I totally get you. Totally get you. Ellie Wynn. Back up, narc. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Sometimes if I see people who are narcissistic and they're coming my way, that's kind of my mentality. Oh, no, we're not doing this. No. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll flatter my way out of the situation. You know what I mean? Like one time, an elderly woman gypped me in line. And she tried to say, I didn't know you were in line. Yes, you did. I let it go. And she turned around and said, were you there that whole time? This was in Lowe's, by the way. And I've never, I don't know what's wrong with Lowe's, but the customers are so, demanding and rude sometimes. But I'm in Lowe's, I'm in line. She gyps me, she literally gets in front of me. And she says, turns around and says to me, were you in line? And my first thought was, you very well know that I was, and I'm annoyed, but it's okay because you look to be around 79, 80. So I'm going to let it go. But she kept saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me get behind you. But then that would be gypping the other person. She says, do I have to go all the way back to the back of the line? And I said, you know what? Just stay where you are. I'm not in a big rush today. It's okay. And she kept going on and on and on. Well, the way that I ended that conversation was by telling her therapeutic dog, which I don't think she needed. Her therapeutic dog was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. Oh my God, she's so cute. Is that a bow? Right? It was like I had to shift the focus because she was starting to get on my last nerve. So sometimes, Ellie Wynn, that's my mentality. Please back up. I can't do this. I can't. It's not going to work. Jazz and laughter. Ooh, I like that. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. And welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. Arlando says, I've been no contact with my family and old friends almost 4 years now. Yep. Sometime it has to be, right? Fairy Girl, I'm going to put that up there. Post-traumatic growth resource, Tim Fletcher. Yes. I agree. All right, guys, I'm scrolling just a little bit here. Courtney Frazier, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Says, I am getting annoyed at my dad. I'm getting annoyed at how my dad treats my pain. I want to get admitted to the hospital and he knows it. He just wants me to go from doctor's appointment to doctor's appointment. Oh my, that's frustrating, right? Yeah. And you always mention that, and I never know what advice to give you or suggestions because I don't know. We've talked before as a consultation. I just don't know what the dynamic is and why he's like this and what's going on. So I can't really give you a balanced view. But if you truly needed help and you feel like you need to go to the hospital, you can always, and this is a good way to get around actually going to the hospital, you can always call paramedics. And you can tell them, I don't feel good. Can I have my vitals checked? My blood pressure, my fluids, do I have a fever? Is something broken? Whatever the case may be, you can always call an ambulance and they can do some on-site first aid just to see what's going on with you. That might be a good way to kind of get things started. And if they say, we're going to take you to the hospital, here's why we want to take you to the hospital, right? There's your ticket. And I hope I'm not getting you in trouble, Courtney Frazier, but that might be a good way to do that. All right, guys. Kim Matthew. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Yes, I'm glad you could jump on. We're actually going to wrap up. Mark Lee, did I say hello to you? Welcome. Good to see you in another live chat. Lay, is it Lay or Leah? No, it's Lay, right? Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Okay, just scrolling and scrolling to make sure I didn't miss anyone. Hold on. I think we're good. I think we're good. Sammy D, I said hello to you. For those of you who may have sent me a super chat, just know that I see you, I hear you, and I'm so grateful for you. So I hope this conversation tonight was helpful. Hopefully the tips that I provided is a good start. I'm still practicing boundaries in my own personal and professional life. There are times when I'm so exhausted because I feel burned out by my work at times. I feel, sometimes burned out by my family who also needs me as much as my clients do. Sometimes I'm so tired that I lax my boundaries and then I pull them back up and I'm strong and I'm ready to go. And then guess what happens? I get tired again and then I lax my boundaries. But really what I encourage you to do is use some of these tips to strengthen your boundaries as much as you can. Practice them at every opportunity and stick to them. You don't want to be an individual who just sways left and right, because if you're doing that with a family member, a friend, it's easy for them to see that you're not serious about your boundary, because you slide a little bit over there, you slide a little bit over there, you know what I mean? You want to be firm so they'll understand this is really an exception to the rule when I'm flexible, you know? So hope this was helpful. Love you guys so much. Thank you for all your kindness. I will see you next weekend. You're going to get some really cool videos coming up during the week as well. So stay tuned. Love you. See you soon. Bye-bye.